In this video, I'm going to tell you why resting alone or pushing through are not your only options for getting over your problems, as well as 2 key strategies to finally dig yourself out of the injury hole and into a better running performance trajectory. Now, as a runner, if you run into a little bit of trouble or you're dealing with some sort of injury, you really have 2 options. You either just hope for the best and push through your training anyway and hope that pain resolves itself, or if it becomes a problem, you decide to rest. And all depending if you're the person who's pushed through in the past to the point where all of a sudden you're walking around limping everywhere, well, now you're stuck resting as well. Resting alone is not going to solve the problem, and I want to show you why, because it's important, and I want to illustrate this point with a little story. And we're going to talk about the rusty bike. Now imagine, instead of thinking about you the runner, you're thinking about you the bike rider, and your body in this respect is the bicycle itself. You're ready to go out. It's a nice beautiful day just like today, and you're excited to go hit the road. You go and get on your bike, and just like the first few minutes, just like your run sometimes, the bike doesn't feel good. It's not performing. It's not really riding that well. And you get off, you scratch your head and you look and you're like, well, wait a minute. My bike's not riding that well. And when I feel the tires are kind of flat. And when I look at the chain, you know, there's a little rust on the chain. So what do you decide to do? You're like, well, the bike's not riding that well today. Maybe it'll ride better tomorrow. So I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna rest my bike because my bike responds to rest. And I'm gonna come back and ride again the next day. Well, you know what happens. You go out and ride again the next day, the tires are even more flat, and the chain is even more rusty. So sometimes we can't rest our way out of problems, right? The problems are still there when we go back to our training. So let's get real specific here, and let's talk about knee pain. Runner's knee, patellofemoral issues, even to a degree IT band issues that we sometimes collectively put in this area right here. Now, if you're someone who doesn't have pain in your knee, fantastic, we want to keep it that way. But we're using this as an example, right? So even if you don't have knee pain, it really works for every single body part. Now, as I said, if I have knee pain, I've got a few options. The knee hurts, it aches at the end of the run, I could change up my shoes. Maybe I take a day off tomorrow. Maybe I take a day off and put some ice on it tomorrow. But I may notice as soon as I go back to running, all of a sudden that pain creeps its way back in. Or every time I try to scale my running up another level, it creeps back in. Well, we need a mobility self-treatment issue. And this is what's going on. If my knee is painful, if I'm feeling pain around the pressure here, what's usually happening is that I've got some sort of tension further up the chain in the big beefy quadriceps, you know, these muscles right up here. And this is usually what's going on. When the quads get really tight, because they do a lot of work for us, power us through our runs, they pull on the tendons, which then all of a sudden insert and attach to the joint themselves. So if I'm feeling pain at the joint, I just need to work backwards. I need to work from the joint to the tendons, from the tendons to the muscles that obviously pull on the tendons themselves. So just by working here, I can get in there. We all know this standing stretch here, where I stand and balance on one foot and get a little quad hip flexor stretch. Not bad, especially if you got nothing, but I want to show you how you could use this tree to get a lot more leverage. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to start on all fours down on the ground. I'm going to kick this leg back up to the base of it. My toe's going to be straight up. I'm going to pop this other leg out, and right now I'm just going to live in this lunge position. At first this may be painful for some of you guys because this is so tight. If you can handle it, I want you to slowly bring your torso up all the way, and you're gonna feel a nice monster stretch. I'm definitely feeling my run from earlier today in this quad and this hip, and I just want you to camp out here for 2 or 3 minutes. You can do this against a wall, maybe wear socks so you don't mark it up. You could do this against a couch or a box or anything, right? Spending some time here is a great way to open up those quads. The other short-term solution is gonna be with some sort of rolling device, some sort of self-treatment and soft tissue work. I'm going to spend on this side so you can see, and I'm just going to live here. And as opposed to just going back and forth this way, which is not a bad way to go, I want to go against the grain. This east-west direction is really important. It's really how we foam roll the right way. Most of us just roll back and forth this way. We don't really get in there as deep as possible. If I feel a little pressure, there's an issue. So even if you don't have knee pain, but you feel pressure here, there might be something going on that you could work on, right? You can early detect and catch injuries. And we're gonna work our way through a quad on all different parts, the lateral part of my quad, getting into my IT band, and the inner part of my quad as well, the vastus medialis. I could spend a couple minutes on either leg, and that's a nice way to resolve my knee pain from a short-term perspective. Now, we just gave that mobility and self-treatment approach towards our knee, but it really applies to any single body part. And notice that if I had pain in this area, I worked above the area to try to get in there. Well, I could also take that same approach and I could work below this joint as well. I could work in this calf and this shin. For those of you who are dealing with ankle issues, it's the same thing. I might want to roll out my feet and I might want to roll out my calves and my shins. If I've got issues with my shoulder, I need to go into my pecs, I need to go into the back, the upper back here, and then I need to roll around in those areas. So we can start to see that approach. Now, before we get into run mechanics, which we are going to dig into, we need to actually talk about our movement in a bigger picture, how we move throughout the day, how we think about sitting and standing, and this really is important for our knee. Now, the reason why our quads get tight is that we are quad dominant as people, which means that we tend to move in a way that always favors these quads, but de-stresses the hamstrings in this whole posterior chain. Most runners have been told that they're not very strong back here and they have to do a lot of exercises to strengthen them. If I can start to think about moving in a slightly different way, I can solve a lot of these problems from a movement perspective. And this is what I mean. A lot of times when I see athletes squat, and I work with runners all the time in the gym with their squatting or their deadlifting or anything, I see the knees bend first. What happens when my knees bend first, my hamstrings stay a little slack and off tension and I put all this pressure here. And then all of a sudden I bend down and this starts happening when I go up and down stairs, when I go up down hills, I'm putting a lot of pressure here. Well, what I want to do to flip this is to actually take that pressure off the knees and push it back this way into the hamstrings and glutes, the whole powerhouse of being an athlete. So we're going to squat. We're going to think about, rather than knees going first, I'm going to think about leading my hips, driving my hips back first, and all of a sudden I can drop down. My knees are still going to bend, but I'm much more loaded back here as opposed to being way forward in my toes. Just by changing the conversation, changing what we say, not going here, all of a sudden we set ourselves up to not have knee pain in the first place. Guys, running, for us to really do well in running, for us to really perform at a higher level, our running needs to have a living, breathing element to it. It needs to change, it needs to adapt all the time. It can't be static. I can't just follow this one thing that I found online and expect to be successful. I need something more than that. I need to have a team. I need to have a community around me to support me as an athlete. I need to have coaching, and I need to be taught how to move. If I'm cross-training or I'm doing some type of strength training, because we know as runners, strength is important, we can't just follow a little text description online. I can't teach myself how to play golf from a book. It's kind of hard, right? I need that living, breathing quality. And it's why we created the Run Experiences 30-Day Challenge. We wanted to create a video-based program that shows you exactly how to do all the things that we really care about as runners and as athletes. Videos around strength every single day, around mobility to prevent injuries, about running technique and how to run better, as well as different key ideas to focus on all my run workouts over 30 days. Imagine what you could do in a 30-day period if you really focused on all these things. Pretty amazing stuff. Well, go ahead and check out our 30-day challenge right down below. You will not regret it.